We've done a lot of coverage of advances in AI and their potential risks on recent shows. And those segments have got an awful lot of feedback. I love it when the segments we do provoke strong reactions from people. Responses to these have usually come in two forms. So some people have got in touch to say, we've drunk the AI Kool-Aid and are vastly overstating the power of large language models to upend society as we know it, or even end it. Others are outraged that the world appears to be heading towards a serious existential threat, and yet politicians and civil society are doing virtually nothing about it. Now, on this show, I want to take both positions very seriously. In future episodes, I'll be speaking to leading LLM skeptics like Gary Marcus, who's been in frequent fights with Sam Altman on the power of large language models. Today, though, I'm speaking to someone who takes the potential for existential threats from AI very seriously, who is organising to do something about it. Holly Elmore is the founder of the group Pause AI. Welcome to the show. Can I begin by asking you sort of to give a bit of an introduction to yourself and to your organisation that you founded?
So I'm Holly Elmore, and I live in San Francisco. And 2 years ago, basically after ChatGPT, and then some other things happened showing me. So ChatGPT occurred. It was definitely more advanced than I thought I would maybe ever see an AI be in my lifetime. And when I saw it able to have a real conversation and being not just a clever Hans, but really responding and like taking into account what I'd said. And that was just ChatGPT 3 years ago. Now, of course, they're much more sophisticated. I thought, oh no, this thing that I thought could be a problem, for in the future for other people when we have to deal with the risk of artificial intelligence is happening now. And then a couple months later, there was a letter, an open letter called the Pause Letter from the Future of Life Institute that got a lot of signatures. And there were some polls done after that letter showing just in the US, very high support for regulating AI. It was between 60 and 80%, depending on the question, supporting the 6-month pause that was in the letter. And I thought, this is it. We have the ability to really engage the public on this issue, which had been quite abstract and very, far off before. And so that was what inspired me with other people, mainly Joep Mindertsma in the Netherlands, to start Pause AI.
I suppose, can you speak to the skeptics in the audience? So I've been sort of taking this quite seriously, in part because people like Jeffrey Hinton and Yoshua Bengio, who both sort of are godfathers of the technology and don't work for the AI companies. So I can't see an obvious conflict of interest, are sort of taking it very seriously. And that means to me that even if, I know people disagree, but if some very intelligent, distinguished people are saying we should take this seriously, then we should at least, think about it and don't dismiss it. They might be wrong, but I think they're worth listening to. But I suppose that the pushback that I've got on previous episodes is people say, you're misunderstanding LLMs. Large language models are not the kind of things that could ever develop agency. And they're actually not that powerful. I mean, it's basically the pushback you get. This is just, I suppose, predictive text on steroids is one line that people use. And I suppose, do people sort of say that to you when it comes to your campaigning organization, and how do you respond?
Yes. Well, I think that they're often not understanding. Often when you hear this critique, it's if you kind of dig down, the last time somebody really interacted with an LLM was a couple years ago, and that's just light years in AI time. So I think a lot of people, if they just go back to see where the state of the art is now, would be more impressed with. I think it's very hard not to interact with them and get the sense that they're coming up with original ideas. That it is a very powerful technology, and at the very least to interact with them now and not see that it could do jobs that humans are doing. So it could create a lot of societal issues by replacing human labor without us having any kind of system to make sure that people are okay without their jobs. So I think while I sort of appreciate the sentiment, often people are. It's often like the attempt is there to kind of bring power back to the people by saying that, but I think it's overlooking a real threat, and it's not helpful to sleep on that threat.
I suppose the other thing people would say is, if we do take these LLMs seriously, they potentially gain some kind of agency and they're difficult to control. Can we just turn them off? Right? These are these are computer programs. They don't yet sort of exist in the physical world. Isn't there just an off switch if things do get bad?
Sadly, no. So I'd ask people to remember the CrowdStrike outage that happened last year and just how devastating that was and how far-reaching that was. It really showed, I think, in a way that's stuck with me, just how interconnected digitally we already are. And LLMs are on the internet. LLMs are in, multiple giant data centers. There's no plug you can just unplug. In fact, it's been considered that we should have legislation to ensure there's a kill switch for AI models. And the argument is that it's too hard. It would be too burdensome on industry. So that's how much we can't just unplug AI models. So the question becomes, how much are you willing to bet on your take that they're not that powerful? Because if we're wrong about this, it could be extremely devastating. And I think what we're suggesting is very common sense regulation and ability to maintain human control over LLMs. Whether maybe we get lucky and they turn out that they couldn't have harmed us at all. I don't think that that's very likely at this point, but it's possible. Or maybe we get very unlucky and the situation is worse than we thought it would be. We're in this situation for the first time. I think caution is mandated either way.
And I suppose when you talk about the potential to do us harm, I know it's difficult to sort of lay out any one particular scenario because I know people working on this sort of say, well, there are so many scenarios. But I suppose to make this concrete, what kind of scenario would you be concerned about if the kind of regulations you want implemented aren't implemented?
So the CrowdStrike bug is a great starting place, I find, to help people be primed to see how far-reaching this could go. So the CrowdStrike was just a bug. It was a bad update. So it was just about propagating the right update to all of those systems to fix it. And that still took a lot of time and billions of dollars were lost. Crucial infrastructure was endangered, so lives were lost. I don't remember what the final accounting of that was. But so it was very serious. Now imagine if it wasn't a bug, it was a program written by an AI, an intelligent agent that's not trying to avoid being shut down. How difficult that would be, and how much in a very short time, just cybersecurity threats like that could cripple our digital infrastructure, which could have planes falling out of the sky. It could cause societal chaos. Those conditions are quite dangerous as well. Like it could interfere with the ability to maintain rule of law. It could interfere with. It's really, if you look at our world today, there's like so little that isn't connected and dependent on digital infrastructure, and it's just ripe for the taking. These LLMs are on the internet. They write programs to do things. I like to be very general in how I talk about these possible threats because I don't want people to take away the idea that there's only like a few ways that LLMs could be dangerous. I like to emphasize like the real danger here is like the sky's the limit creatively. There are new threats opened up by advanced AI that we've never considered before. There's new ways in which our society is fragile, in which it's never been fragile before because we haven't had a tool like that. And our digital infrastructure is already incredibly vulnerable. It's new. It's vulnerable to human cyber attacks. We're going to find new ways in which it's more vulnerable. And that's just one attack vector for how advanced AI not doing what we want could really affect our society.
I suppose what are you doing? So you're a campaign group in a way. What strategies are you using to try and, I suppose, make some change here to pause AI, as your name suggests?
We are a community. We're doing grassroots community building. We do protesting, and we also do lobbying, and especially grassroots lobbying. So connecting people to their representatives, and just so that they can explain their concerns after offering very general public education about the nature of the danger. We think it's not that hard, and there's a lack of voices out there talking about this in a way that provides a general enough education so that people can really take in this crazy fire hose of news. In the absence of that education, people are confused, and I think they they see very shifty characters running these AI companies and saying these crazy things like, oh, yeah, my product is going to kill you, 20% chance. And I think they know that something's up and that something's wrong, but they're taking the wrong lesson from that. They're thinking like they're lying about the technology. And unfortunately, that's not true. The technology they're making could be extremely destructive. But with just, a little bit of orientation and education, you don't have to be an expert on the technology. And making your voice heard through protests, through meetings with your representatives, we can kind of take that momentum back.
And I kind of get the sense that the scientists who are worried about this haven't quite got their act together. And I suppose what I mean by this is when it came to climate change, right, before the political establishment took it seriously, they needed to, the scientists needed to get together and say, we have absolute consensus here. Because so long as you have disagreement among experts, then you can basically pick your favorite expert. So if you are JD Vance and you're in favor of deregulation, you can pick your favorite expert who says you don't really need to worry. And then someone who's, not averse to regulation, they can pick their favorite expert who says you should worry. And I think we only got somewhere on climate when scientists got together and said, no, you really have to worry. If you manage to find a scientist who's not worried, ignore them. They're a crank, right? And with this, I'm not sure if I can imagine the sort of computer scientists or neuroscientists or the people working on this getting their act together in time so that politicians do have to take it seriously. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
This is very frustrating to me. So Pause AI is meant to be an umbrella. It's meant to be, it is a policy, but really pause. So the idea behind pause is that we're asking for time where they're not developing AI and pushing the frontier of advanced AI further, and where we're figuring out what we need for safety and what we need for governance and democratic oversight of AI technology. So that's the ask. And yeah, it's just, I think what you say is true, that so a lot of people, scientists working in climate change, kind of got their political consciousness eventually, and they knew how to like hold a line. And in AI science, it's just not quite that way. People feel very wary of kind of signing on to anything. They what if there's some slightly better way? Like there's this is frustrating because I work with a lot of people like this. I try to get people to sign on to open letters and stuff, and there's a lot of people have not kind of figured out what details are important or not important, and what is the importance of standing together and making a statement politically. It's unfortunately we don't have as much time as even we did with climate change, urgently evolving issue. We still have even less time with the way that AI progress is going for people to figure this out. Where in the meantime, I think that the most effective thing that I can do is to focus on rallying the public who do already substantially share the sentiments behind Pause AI. And it's kind of obvious. I mean, taking caution in a situation like this is the right move. And it's no wonder that we've got, 60 to 80% of the US public, very similar numbers for other countries where we have Pause AI groups, behind us on, taking caution, wanting regulation. Another big issue with the AI science world, of course, is that it's very captured by industry. A lot of the places you can even do state-of-the-art research on AI systems are in companies that are trying to profit, from those AI systems. And there's a lot of fear about upsetting them. And I think the field just has a long way to go about just deciding what side it's on. And there was some of this in the climate change movement with fossil fuel companies, and they did get their act together. And I can only hope that the same thing will happen in our space, but I'm not counting on it. What I'm counting on is the public having the right sentiments and saying, I want to make sure that we don't wake up dead from these problems, or that we don't wake up in a society that we don't want because we were trying to protect the interests of AI companies.